fat. So that might be how they get an eating disorder. But one thing I found out is that for Asian American women, one of the biggest indicators of having a body image problem is not being the right complexion, not being light enough. So that might be the opposite, but all the symptomology that we have now says that women are so scared of being fat, they'll do anything not to be fat, but for Asian American women, it might be like, I'll do anything to be the right complexion, I'll do anything to have longer legs, or different kind of hair, or different nose shape, or different eye shape, that I start having an eating disorder because I can't change my eye shape, but I could change the way my body looks. So we have to get past the idea that it's all about being fat. And that also goes for African American and Latino women. There's this idea that everyone is so afraid of being fat, but for those communities, it's a lot different as well. And some of that also for their communities involves skin color too. So we have to get away from the idea that it's like a fear of fat. Because it has to do with how we diagnose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any comments?
Can you talk about the model minority? How come Asians don't get to be the model minority?
Oh my, okay. It's like how we... So if you don't know model minority, we're going to go like back in history. So obviously, Asian Americans have been coming to the United States since like the 1800s and were treated really badly. They were primarily here in California. Chinese were the first wave during the gold rush. And there was every Asian American group that first came, Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans, Filipino Americans. At some point in time, there was legislation put in place to ban them from immigrating to America because, quote, they were taking all the jobs from like the white people. Because they like were treated poorly, they had to work for less money, but they were really good at what they did, so they became a threat to white labor. So like California in particular passed a lot of legislation to ban Asian Americans from immigrating to the U.S. The China's Exclusion Act of, was it 1898? 1882 was on the books until the beginning of World War II. So that's like the longest ban of anyone immigrating to America in like U.S. history. So what happened is Asian Americans were banned from coming. Then like around World War II, Japanese became like the most hated like Asian group. So they steadily started letting more Asian Americans come back into the country, but again treated really poorly. And then if you're not familiar with World War II, you know, there's the idea that all Japanese Americans were like spying on America for Japan. So then we're gonna like put Japanese Americans in internment camps and like take away all their like houses, all their money, all their businesses, and we're gonna like let them out all these years later. So by the 1960s, African Americans in particular are like fighting for civil rights and saying like, you know, we're not going to continue to be treated as second-class citizens, and they were very vocal about organizing that. But Asian Americans by that time, particularly Chinese and Japanese Americans, had started doing really well economically in terms of education and kind of like working for themselves, and were not really as active in the civil rights movement. So a white man wrote, I believe in Time, was it, I think in Time magazine, right? Or was it, yeah, Time magazine wrote an article about how successful Japanese Americans were, and kind of like to pit them against African Americans, saying like, Japanese Americans are doing so well, and like they were interned, and like we took away all their stuff, so like African Americans, like why are you complaining for your rights? Like if Asian Americans can like, you know, do so well and they're treated so badly, like how come you can't do well? So it's the idea that like, okay, in order to try to like quiet African Americans from fighting for their rights, we're gonna use Asian Americans as like the middleman minority, because like maybe they're not as disadvantaged as African Americans, but they're not as privileged as white Americans. So if we say like, well, they're successful and you're not, we can say that like something must be inherently wrong with African Americans, and Asian Americans are just better than you. So like, why is everyone upset? So it's really exploited. But then again, that was about Japanese Americans and later about Chinese Americans. But that's obviously not very inclusive. Again, over the like the 3 dozen ethnicities that constitute Asian Americans were. So initially it became Japanese Americans are super awesome, why is everyone else doing badly? Chinese Americans are super awesome, why are you doing badly? Then by the 70s it became all Asian Americans are doing amazing, so like African Americans and Latinos, like why are you still doing so bad? But by that point in time, a lot of refugees were coming over here from Vietnam, from Laos, from Cambodia, and they're actually still some of the poorest people in America. But we like started putting everyone together as like this one, everyone's Asian American. So initially it was about Chinese and Japanese Americans, but later became all Asian Americans. And it was like a really political move to try to the Latinos and African Americans fighting for civil rights were somehow bad people, that they wanted their rights. Because Asian Americans are doing so good, like you should be doing good too. And then we still have that today, and it's still used today to like put groups against each other and be really exploitive. So anything, does anyone anything like clarified?
Yeah, I never knew like to today like these women had like a large amount of like genes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's how you look. some people just stereotype, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the issue is that like when I was initially doing this project, I started researching this in the beginning of 2010, and like there's like literally like no research on this topic. Like if you go to the SJC database and you typed in like eating disorders or like Asian American women and eating disorders, you're gonna find there's like maybe barely 20 articles. And so like the first like 20 articles I found and I read, they were really, really short, and they basically said that Asian American women have no eating disorders. And like I knew that was bullshit. I'm like, this can't be true. Like I know Asian American women that have told me, you know, like I have an eating disorder, or like the way they would talk to me, I knew that they were like something was wrong, like something was like not okay. So I really wanted to like do this topic. And so most of the articles I found at first, they were like really short, and it was like comparing white women to Asian American women, to Latino women, to black women, and saying like, well, white women have the most symptomology, so like they have a lot of eating disorders, but like nobody else does. And I was like, that can't be true. So I kept like looking and looking and looking, and the problem is like all the things I found totally conflicted, and none of it really made sense until I found a really awesome article called The Double Violence of Our Body, written by a Japanese American woman, I forget from what university, and she really breaks it down. She starts going into like kind of what I was talking about. She really inspired me because that was like the first article I found that actually was like Asian American women do have body image problems, like they do have eating disorders, and she was breaking down that a lot of it is like media stereotypes, because it's kind of like you're either supposed to like a stereotype or be like invisible. So kind of like if no one even knows you exist in the world, and or if you do exist, you have to be like a prostitute, you have to be like conservative, you have to be like a nerd, or you have to be like all these like stereotypes. Those are really like negative implications on Asian American women. But yeah, to research any women of color and eating disorders is really hard, because there is like, recently there was a tiny bit of research coming out, but compared to just ambiguous women or to white women, there's like almost nothing.
Yeah, just majority of study is usually just like Asian people.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a really good article also about women of color that was saying that when research does try to be diverse, you can't say that women of color as an ambiguous group, because like, do you mean African American, do you mean Latino, do you mean Asian American, do you just mean not white? Because people use ethnicity, women of color, and then the specific race interchangeably, but like you can't do that, because what's going on with an African American woman could be totally different from like an immigrant woman from like the Philippines. It's not the same thing. So like that's part of the issue. People try to be diverse, that it fails because it doesn't make sense who you're talking about anymore. It's totally, yeah, it was hard. It was really hard to get anything about this topic.
So I don't know if this applies to all like Asian women, but for a fact I know like my parents always called me fat. Like even when I know I'm not fat, they'll be like, oh, you're fat, you need to lose weight and stuff like that. And then like I would go to a doctor, and then like I went to like an Asian doctor, and she's like, oh, you're overweight by Asian standards. And it's like honestly, like, I was like 120 pounds. I was like 5'3", like that's average. I mean, I think that's normal, but then they were like, oh, you're totally overweight. Like you're going to be overweight if you gain some more pounds. So I would be like, oh, I have to lose weight. So that's when like your parents are always like, well, my parents were like, oh, you need to lose weight, you're fat, or oh, like why do you look kind of like fat right now? Like you should, you know, go work out or something, you know. So sometimes it's fueled by like your family too.
No, totally, definitely. And you know, like in Asia, like you see, like I don't have any photos of this unfortunately, but again, if you go to Google and you type in, go to Google Images and type in like Asian American models, like Asian American women are like models from Asia. A, they all have eyelid surgery. B, they're all lighter than me and I'm mixed. And then like they're super small, like they're like almost like my height, but like they're like a size 0. Their limbs are like, who looks like that now? I'm not making fun of that, but I'm like, naturally most women are not gonna be almost this height and be like a size 0. And like, how did you get so light and they cut into your eye? So like, there's like this weird like idea, that whole schizophrenia thing. Like, cause in Asia, the women on the billboards might be Asian, but they don't look like us. You know what I mean? They kind of like been like either
they're
like
Photoshopped.
Yeah, they're photoshopped. It's not realistic. And like our families, because I have relatives from Hong Kong, and so I was a heavy child. You know what I mean? And so I would have relatives from Hong Kong. Like, you're getting big, and I was big, but like they'd be like they bring clothes from like Hong Kong. We're not gonna fit my body because I was too tall and I was too heavy. Like, you're fat, like you can't wear this nightgown. I'm like, yeah, because it's for someone who's like, you know, for like a child. You know what it just wasn't. I know what you mean. It's just idea that you can't fit the like extra small from Asia, then you're somehow like overweight. But then in America, like different food, different everything, we're not gonna, you know, those Asian, does anyone know like if you go to East San Jose, there's like Asian owned clothing stores? Yes, you know what I mean?
I think it's kind of in an Asian store where there's like one size fits all, there's the other side.
Yes.
They're just like,
and if you come out of the fitting room and it doesn't fit, they'll be like, you're big. I'm like, no, we're not all the same size. Like, I'm sorry. It's very true.
You know what, I just recently started going to the 24-hour Superstore over at 101. And I am in shock. It's like probably 9 out of every 10 women in the gym are Asian.
Wow.
All working out all the time. And I don't know if it's maybe that area is higher populated or what, but it's a definite, you can't deny it. Like, they work out more than anybody else, I think, in any other culture.
It's intense. Now you're going to be at the gym and you're going to be like, what do you look like? Do you all look the same? Are we all trying to look the same now? That's really interesting. Super interesting.
I was like, I made that observation when I first started going there. Wow. And ever since then, I've been going for a while. I've noticed that.
I know like one report I read was saying that in terms of like maybe over-exercising, that there may be like sexual abuse that Asian American women have dealt with, but because culturally it's very like, you don't get sexually abused, like you don't tell people your business, so maybe perhaps they cover up sexual abuse, maybe like you can't control like the abuse that happens to you, and maybe you can't like tell anyone about it. So if you start like freaking out about like exercising, it's a way to kind of like mask like what's going on. So I'm not saying the women at your gym are sexually abused, but that's something that has yet to be researched. It was mentioned in one of the articles as something that should be researched. But kind of like, okay, I'm not going to tell anyone like I got raped or I got molested by like whoever, but I could control like not eating every day, or I could control like throwing up, or like I could control like working out like every day of my life and being like as small, or you know, as toned as small as possible might be a way to cover up like other things that are going on that have yet to be researched.
My stepmom, she's Korean, and she'll always tell me like, oh, you're so skinny, you look so good. Like, I'm tall, and I'm like 5'8", and she's like 5'2" or 5'3". And she can wear all my clothes, like, we're the same size, but she thinks she's so fat, and it's just weird. But like you're comparing, she wants to like look like me, but she's so beautiful. Like, she's almost 50, and she's had 2 kids, and she's one size like 2. It's just amazing.
Wow. It's that schizophrenia, huh? Like, is she, do you know, is she from Korea or is she born in the United States?
I think she was born in Korea, I think. Her parents only speak Korean, and like, she speaks Korean.
Because I know like the whole like beauty ideals at odds thing affects mainly like Asian, like women born in the United States, but particularly like I was saying earlier, like if you go to Asia, I haven't been to Asia, but you know, friends have been to Asia and like researching, like if you go to Asia, particularly like Japan and Korea, there's really like Americanized like advertising. So it's either like really like unrealistic white women or super unrealistic depictions of Asian women. So then like a lot of Asian women that come to America have this idea that like either everyone is white or all Asian women should look how these like models look. I actually had another student in my program who was from Taiwan, and she was in high school, and she came to San Francisco to go to an international high school, and she's only been here for like 2 years, and she's told me, you know, like when I was in, no, not Taiwan, she was from mainland China, she was like, you know, in China, all my peers told me that when I went to America, everyone was going to be white. And then she went to San Francisco, and everyone at her school is from China. But because of like the media and like what her friends saw, they were like, Shuyin, like when you go to America, like you're gonna be the only, everyone's gonna be blonde, they're all gonna be really tan, like and I thought she was making it up. She's like, no, like then she came, and then she like, and then we were in Cupertino at De Anza College. If you don't know, Cupertino is a very Asian American, very Chinese area, and she was like, everyone looks like me, and like I can speak Chinese like everywhere I go. But her friends in China really thought when she came, everyone was gonna be like blonde, looking like Paris Hilton because of just like this media consumption, not just in America, but around the world. So she said it's not good or bad, but then she also said that when she came, she had a friend come visit her from China, and they were like in San Francisco, in Chinatown, very Chinese there, you know what I mean? And her friend actually was kind of like upset that there weren't enough white people in Chinatown because she thought that like going to America meant that everyone is like blonde and white, and that's what America's all about. And then so my student was kind of telling her like, I used to think that too, then I came and like people are so nice, like it's so diverse, like I'm so happy here, but I have this idea of what America is supposed to be like, not only here but like abroad, because our media, just YouTube, everything just goes so viral like all the time. I thought that was really intriguing and really upsetting that her friend was like mad that there weren't enough white people in San Francisco. What are you gonna do? I'm sorry.
So did you say that the eye surgery was like more common in Korea than it is here?
It's very common here, but the #1 capital for cosmetic surgery in the world is actually in Korea. The #1 surgery there is the eye surgery, and because it's quote cheaper there, and they're so like pro at cutting into women's eyes, like a lot of Asian American women may travel from here to there for that surgery specifically.
I was super surprised by that because I figured, you know, people over there, or well, I feel like maybe they were doing it to fit in with how people like here, so I'm surprised that in their own country they feel the need to conform to that, but I was wondering, do you know anybody who's had it? Because as far as I know, I
actually don't know anyone that's had it, but one thing I would tell you to do is go online and look for Korean dramas, the Korean soap operas, dubbed in whatever language. And so, like, all the people in the Korean soap operas have had surgery, including the men. So, like, if you just want to know what it looks like, it's just, like, go to, like, YouTube. I can't think of a specific soap opera. Does anyone watch the Korean dramas? Don't be embarrassed. They're funny. No, they're fun. I watch them. Yeah, they're fine. And so, like, just, like, this, even the men, because, like, I've been learning Mandarin for several years, and so my instructor was like, watch Korean dramas, like, dubbed in Chinese, but they just really help you learn. So when she's at my house and we're watching, she goes, that woman's had surgery, that man's had surgery, because she's from China originally. She's like, surgery, 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 surgery. She's, like, pointing out to me all the, like, cosmetic, not just the eyes, but, like, this one guy had, like, a nose job and eyes, and then, like, his hair was blonde. So he still looked, like, Asian, but I think he was supposed to look kind of, like, more like a white guy, but it was in Korea. So if you just look for Korean dramas, like, all the people on those shows are, like, enhanced. The eyes specifically. As soon as you go, their eyes are like this big, but their faces are really small, so it's not natural.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're gonna know right away that's not how they really look. I'm sorry, there's a question over here?
No, I also was gonna bring up the fact that a lot of areas, even around here, have been doing like the facial tattoos, like the eyebrows, the lip liners, the eyeliners, and it seems like it's a lot of the Asian kind of spas and salons are doing that. I don't know if that helps spreading to do that.
I haven't read anything about that, but I'd be curious because I know a lot of the like Vietnamese American-owned salons do that. And actually, my Chinese instructor Lily, when she was in China, she had the eyeliner. She's like in her 40s now, but I guess when she was like in her 20s, she had the eyeliner tattooed on her eyes, which kind of freaked me out because I was like, I'm not judging you, but I don't want a tattoo on my eye. But I guess that used to be only in Asia, but more recently you will see it like in salons. But I don't know a lot about it.
Reality show, like, called Russian Dolls, and she had her lip lined, and you could tell that there was a lip liner that was tattooed there. And I have an aunt who actually got her eyebrows done.
Wow.
And it's like hard to it's hard to be in the same room with her without staring, kind of like. And I've been noticing it a lot more on the
That would be an interesting topic though. I don't know a lot about the actual facial tattoos, but that would be an interesting topic. Is that a body image thing? Like, I don't really know, but that's really true. It is really common now. I'm sorry.
I actually know so many of my friends who did the eyelid surgery.
Wow.
And so, like, they go to China or, like, they go to, like, Hong Kong or something, and then they just go and do it. And it's so fast. It takes, like, literally, like, 15 minutes. And then, basically, it heals in, I think, like, a couple of days, maybe less than a week.
Okay.
And then you're fine. But then, like, I'm a makeup artist, so I've done makeup on them, and you can totally see the scars. It's really scary. It's like, I'll be doing makeup, and I thought, like, because I remember seeing them before, and then it's like single eyelids, right? And then they're on and doing makeup on them. And then I'm like, why is it so jaggedy? Like, you can tell, like, because after a couple of years, your skin kind of like, I guess it's more stretchy. So you can tell that they cut into it. And then, like, I was doing a wedding for a makeup for a wedding. And then one of my teachers, my previous teachers, she had her eyelids done for a couple of years already. And you can totally see it. Like, you can see how they cut into it. And it's kind of like gross, but it's kind of like, I don't want to say anything because it's your wedding. But like, you can totally tell when they do the surgery.
Well, actually, I'm really glad you brought that up because you're a makeup artist, right? So you know how I was saying earlier, the cosmetic surgery industry has like racialized the procedure, saying that like apparently Asian American ladies, I'm sorry, apparently we cannot put on eye makeup correctly because like we don't have two eyelid like folds or whatever. So like when you would do makeup on people before they had the surgery, could you not put eye makeup on them? Was it so hard to like give them makeup and make them look beautiful?
Well, like, to be honest, it's so hard to do makeup on single eyelids because I'm double eyelids. Like, I was born this way, and it's a lot easier for me to do makeup. But right now I'm kind of learning how to do single eyelids because I know it actually looks really good if you know how to do it and you don't have to like fake it and like, you know, do surgery. So that's what I'm learning how to do right now because I mean, I know I'm Asian and a lot of my friends are Asian, so it's easier for me to do makeup on them if I know how. So that's what I'm learning how to do.
That's tight. No, I'm glad you said that because the one article was so like, the whole thing was about eye makeup. It wasn't about like, we're just giving them procedures they want. It was about, because they can't put on makeup. And I was like, I don't wake up in the morning and freak out that I can't go buy makeup and like put it on correctly. But